Good evening and welcome. My name is Joanne Bankson. I am president of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County, and I want to thank this Pasco Police for providing this wonderful facility and allowing us to be here. There's sign-ups in the back, and we would encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about our league to sign up. We can send you a newsletter. You can be male or female or student, and we welcome your interest in our membership. Please note the League of Women Voters does not support or oppose individual candidates or political parties. In presenting these candidate forums, it is our goal to provide opportunities for voters to become better informed about the people who are running for public office and who will represent you. If you know anyone who is a first-time voter in our state, there is still time to register in person at the auditor's office in the county where they live. That deadline is Monday, July 30th. Turnout for our primary election is usually quite low, and we're hoping that those watching tonight or here tonight will be sure to return their ballots on time and encourage others to do so. Registered voters should be receiving their ballots by the end of this week. If you're expecting a ballot and do not receive one, contact your county auditor. And for the first time in our state, all ballots will include free return postage. And however, you can still save the state and county's money by using the drop boxes, the usual drop boxes. Tonight's forum is being live streamed on social media, specifically on the City of Pasco's Facebook page, and it is being recorded to be replayed later on the Pasco City Television, channel 191, so that those who are not attending tonight will be able to view the forum, or you could review it. It will also be available for viewing on YouTube. So tonight we'll be hearing from the candidates who are seeking the position of state representative in the 16th District, position 2. This is a 2-year term. We will then have the candidates running for Franklin County Commissioner in District 3, a 4-year term. At this time, I am pleased to introduce Tracy Dial, a news anchor and reporter from KNDU-TV, who will serve as our moderator. There you go, Tracy.
Well, thank you all so much for being here today. It's nice to see a pretty full room of people who are going to be well-informed voters. I want to say a huge thank you to the League of Women Voters as well for putting on an event like this. It's unparalleled for all of us to get to learn more about our candidates. So with that, let's begin. Tonight we will be using the following format. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. We'll then move on to a question and answer period. All candidates running for the same position will answer the same questions, alternating who goes first. And we have prepared questions, but we're also taking questions from the audience. If you haven't written one yet, we would love to take that. And please let us know which race you would like it to be for. Also, make sure you're asking questions that all candidates can answer, nothing to any one individual, nothing of a personal nature. And hold up your card, and a league member will collect it if we haven't already. Now, each candidate will also have 1.5 minutes for their closing statement as well. Candidates, I'd like to point out our timer to you. She's up here in the yellow. She'll hold up 15 seconds when you have 15 seconds left to go and a stop sign. You don't have to finish right when the stop sign is up, but please do try and finish up your thought at that time. So with that, let's begin by introducing the candidates running for State Representative Position 2 in the 16th District. They are Skylar Rude, Rebecca Francic, and Dan Milton. For simplicity's sake, we're going to go in the order in which they filed. So Mr. Rude, you can begin with your 2-minute opening statement.
Wonderful, thank you. My name is Skylar Rude, and I just want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I think it's especially important to have these kind of forums during the primary because we aren't going to have physical voters pamphlets distributed to households. I just want to give a little bit of my professional background, some bio, and then if I have time, some of the issues that are most important in my campaign. Professionally, I was an insurance agent for about 5 years before I started working for Senator Maureen Walsh as her legislative assistant in January of 2015. I'm also the chairman of the County Republican Party. I'm on the executive board for the state party, so I've been politically active that way, and then also in the legislature. The reason that I'm running is because I feel it's important, especially today, that we're putting good policy above partisan politics. and bringing a sense of civility to the discussion. That's very valuable to me, and that's something that I hope to bring to the legislature if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. I'll just talk about three issues that are most important legislatively for me. The first is education. I think appropriately because the state constitution requires that education is the first duty of the state. Where I think we could do better is our focus. Four-year education is a four-year college degree is important, but I feel like we should be emphasizing alternative pathways to success that can include apprenticeship programs, one-year certificate programs, and other pathways that do lead to good income levels, but also result in lower college debt. And it looks like my time is about up. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rude. Ms. Franczyk, you filed next.
Thank you. Hello, I am Rebecca Franczyk, and thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I was born into a household with both Republicans and Democrats. Our family dinner discussions were robust, but at the end of our meals, our shared core values remained the same. We worked hard and we took care of our community. This election season, the 16th LD has an open seat to fill. I believe I am the best qualified candidate to represent you based on my elected and work experience. I was a member of the Pasco City Council for 21 years. In that position, I lobbied the legislature many times on behalf of taxpayers. I served on 2 state infrastructure boards funding roads, bridges, water, and sewer systems throughout eastern Washington. I grew up on a small family farm in Pullman and graduated with an agronomy degree from WSU. I know farming from the soil to the weeds. Appointed by Governor Locke to the Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board, I worked 8 years at the state level to ensure that farmers and businesses had the roads they needed to move products to market. I have worked hard my entire life. I know the difference between wants and needs, and I only spend my money if I know there is a return on my investment. As a legislator, I will bring that same approach to your tax dollars. Education is the best long-term investment we can make. I'm a nationally board certified teacher in the Pasco School District. I have firsthand experience working with our students. I know what they need to succeed and will advocate for the local funding and control necessary to get us there. Healthcare is an issue that impacts each and every one of us. As a city council member in a self-insured city, I watched our insurance rates skyrocket, even as the inflation index was close to 0. We have to take a comprehensive look at healthcare and make it affordable for everyday citizens. Throughout my career, I have demonstrated integrity, hard work, adaptability, and persistence. I know how to collaborate and I know how to compromise, but my greatest strength is in looking at where we are, deciding where we want to be, and fighting for getting there. When you elect me, Rebecca Franczyk, I will listen to your concerns. I will value your input, and I will work hard each and every day for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Franczyk. Mr. Milden.
Yes, my name is Dan Milden, and again, thanks to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, and thank you to all the guests that are here participating. I entered the race out of my long time concern and love for community service over and above my profession. I was a mechanical engineer from WSU, master's from University of Washington, and Army officer in the unit right across the street, the Army National Guard, for 3 years locally and in other areas. So with this experience and the projects that demonstrate my skills, 737 aircraft, quite a significant part of that, and Unit 2, I was a systems completion manager for the nuclear unit, and for environmental cleanup out at K Basins and the plutonium finishing plant, which mitigated a significant risk of 4,000 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel just a quarter mile away from the Columbia River. That was put into dry storage. I was the final signatory that said that we can safely do this with no potential because of all the trained personnel and systems. And we did that successfully. In my community service, 7 years in Benton County Mosquito Control District, 16 years elected to the Kennewick School District. And during that time, the National School Board Association awarded us 2 national awards for innovative school board programs. And I stood on the stage down in Anaheim, California, and New Orleans to receive those. So I think with my background of community service, professionalism, and dedication, that I would be the best choice to serve you in the House of Representatives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milden, and thank you all for your opening statements. We'll now move on to the question and answer period. Once again, each of you have 1.5 minutes, and Mr. Rood, you are up first, as you did file first. Question 1, the last state budget had a $2.4 billion surplus in money in reserve. What do you think is the best use of those funds?
Well, I can say that part of that was scheduled to go into the rainy day fund, which is a reserve account for times when the economy is not doing so well. And that was diverted, unfortunately, it's kind of complicated to explain, but an unprecedented legal maneuver diverted $700 million away from the rainy day fund. So I think when our economy is doing well like it is today, we need to honor that provision in our Constitution to stash away surplus revenue for times where we're going to need it. Because when the economy is not doing well, we have another recession, not only are we going to we're going to have reduced revenues, but we're also going to have higher demand on state services. So that would be one area that I would focus. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Ms. Francic?
Thank you. Well, with that surplus, I think that we absolutely have to fully fund the McCleary decision. We had a court order requiring that we do that, and it's important that we be in line with our lawmakers. I would fully fund pension plans. We have not always fulfilled our obligations there, and I would retire as much debt as possible. I do agree with my opponent, Mr. Rood, that we do need a rainy day fund, and that is also something I would fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francic.
Yeah, I
Mr.
agree
Milden.
that the rainy day fund needs to be held in reserve, but I have to find that in my long time on the school board and all the data we collected across the country, that dollars aren't necessarily a prime indicator of school success. The number one indicator of successful schools is parental involvement. Getting the parents involved for conferences, for support at home, reading to their kids, setting examples, setting expectations. These are all non-cost items. And when we talk about a reserve, this is taxpayer dollars. People have earned that. Why can't we find a way, if we don't have immediate need, to get this back to the taxpayers so they can use it, so they can support their students in school, and that we get back to the limited government, that parents know best for their children, not some elite in a far-off Capitol building, either in Olympia or Washington, D.C. Parents need to be involved in their students' education.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Ms. Francic, you're up first next. How might proposed tariffs at the national level impact our state, particularly Eastern Washington? And is there anything the state can do that might help mitigate the financial impact of these tariffs and what impacts it would have on individuals as well as the state budget?
Would you just read the first part of your sentence again?
It's kind of a long one. How might proposed tariffs at the national level impact our state, particularly Eastern Washington? Is there anything the state can do that might help mitigate the financial impact the tariffs would have on individuals as well as the state budget?
Thank you so much for repeating that. Well, Washington is the #1 trade-dependent state in the nation, and most of that is agricultural product. If you are holding wheat and you don't have a mortgage coming due, you might be able to hold off for 6 months or 9 months. But if you have cherries, you've got a 2-week window before they all go bad. We ship a lot of our cherries to Japan, we ship a lot to China, and apples. The apple market is huge in Mexico. So we are looking at some serious economic consequences for the farmers here. This is a federal issue. There's really nothing that the state can do other than to encourage and work with our federal delegation to try to resolve the trade issues that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francic. Mr. Milden.
My wife's family is heavily involved in farming in the Walla Walla area, and these tariffs and the threat of additional tariffs are of great concern to us, and we'll be working with our U.S. representative and the administration in order to understand why these are necessary and have mechanisms in place that protect our farmers, our farming families from the economic problems and difficulties associated with that.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Mr. Rood.
Thank you. I think what Ms. Francic said is completely spot on. Because it's a federal policy, there isn't anything that the legislature can do legislatively to address this issue. It's of concern to us because it directly impacts us, obviously. But I think the most we can do is work with our federal legislators and urge them to change course on this policy. I mean, it was created and implemented by the president, and I think the Congress needs to step in possibly and correct this. I think there are some fundamental principles that are being promoted from the top, but we have to be very careful. I shouldn't say we, because I'm talking about the federal government. They need to be careful because there are unintended consequences that can hurt businesses, specifically those in agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Mr. Milden, you're up first this time. Statistics show that low-income students who qualify for state scholarships through the College Bound program and sign up for that program do have a higher graduation rate than similar students who don't sign up. Sign-up rates, of course, vary from district to district. Do you think this is just a district responsibility, or could the state do more to fund and encourage participation?
Could you repeat that question again? I'm having difficulty with the echo.
I'm sorry. Statistics show that low-income students who qualify for state scholarships through the College Bound program and sign up for that program have a higher graduation rate than similar students who don't sign up. Sign-up rates, of course, vary from district to district. Do you think this is just a district responsibility, or could the state do more to encourage and fund participation?
Well, I think we found over many years that the number one indicator for all students on college success is math. And we worked very hard to get all students into math programs as early as possible. We asked 9th grade students if they were going to go to college, and 95% of the students would raise their hand, yeah, we're going to college. Are you in a math class as a 9th grader? Well, no. And what we found out is that unless they concentrate on math, I don't care if they're minority or whoever they are, and we didn't look at differences in kids based on some differentials. We looked at all kids because we were there to educate all children to the maximum of their capacity. And the number one indicator, as I said, was math at freshman year and every year until they got into college, if that was their intent. Math is also a very necessary skill working in the workforce. I've heard many employers talk about the lack of math and reading and writing skills for employees. Farmers Exchange over here and other businesses I just talked to recently, that not critical thinking, not different processes, but the basics of reading, writing, and mathematics and showing up on time are the criteria for anybody even going to college.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Mr. Rood.
So is the district or the state responsible? I would say that it's important to value local control. I think the large majority of us value local control in decision making. I think there is room for improvement in the state being a good partner with our school districts. And I think that means putting the time and the energy into working with administration and specifically teachers, because they're the ones that are in the classroom with the students. And I strongly feel there's a lot of room for improvement in that area. So working with them and finding out what tools they need and what resources the state can offer, I think there's a benefit there. And that's something that's how I would approach it, because I feel like they're kind of the boots on the ground and they know what resources they need and what tools would increase participation.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Ms. Francic.
So I was supposed to start working when I was 12, but I conveniently broke my arm. So I started working when I was 13. And every penny I earned went straight into a college fund. My dad told me, I'm the oldest of 9 kids. We don't have enough money to put you through, so you need to start saving your money. I was able to come through college, my first degree, WSU, debt-free. No student has that opportunity now. I have 7 children. None of them were able to come out of school debt-free. And part of that is because the state, who used to fund 2/3 of college tuition, has pulled back their support over the years. So I teach routinely in 6th grade a graph to my students about what their potential earnings are based on their educational attainment. And let me tell you, if you have post-secondary training, your lifetime earnings are significantly greater than if you just graduate from high school. So what does this mean to us as citizens? Well, Microsoft is routinely asking for visas to have foreign workers come into the United States because they are saying that we are not producing the workers that they need to meet the needs of their industry. Why aren't we, as Washingtonians, supplying the workers for the industries that we have in our state? The question was, should these state scholarships for low-income students be the regional district responsibility, or should they be statewide? I will tell you that I think they are a statewide responsibility. The wealth of our nation and the wealth of our community is directly tied to the education of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francic. Next question, Mr. Rood, you'll be up first. The 16th district is rather large geographically. How do you anticipate keeping in touch with the constituents that you'll be serving? Yes, I can. The 16th district is rather large geographically. How do you anticipate keeping in touch with the constituents that you'll be serving?
Thanks for the question. A couple different ideas. One, as I mentioned previously, I've been a legislative assistant for this district for the last 3.5 years or so. And so I'm going to Olympia every year during session anyway. My intention is to make this a full-time position for at least the first term so I can engage with the community. And I've heard in my staff capacity that folks are interested in having legislative forums before session starts. I think we can do more in that area in engagement. And also, if you have somebody that's working full-time for you, here's one example. I think the McCleary decision, I didn't see a lot of teacher involvement in coming to a solution for McCleary. And honestly, I feel like that's because teachers weren't invited to have a significant role in that solution, which is unfortunate. So I think a hands-on legislator who has the time and the energy to dedicate to this position would be a valuable asset to the district. And I intend to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Ms. Francic.
Thank you. Well, this is an interesting question because as I have been doorbelling throughout the district, I've been asking people what it is they want from their legislator. And a number of them have said they want somebody who will answer the phone when they call. So that's one of the things I'm committed to doing. I'll have a publicly available phone number. I will be answering those phone calls. I also think it's important to have regularly scheduled forums within communities on different days so that people can come and attend. And if they're regular on a date they can count on, you might not make the first one, but you can make the second one. I think websites can be extremely useful. And then also that's it. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Francic. Mr. Milden.
Yes. Our Representative Bill Jenkins, who is back here in the audience, set up or participated in video presentations that I attended one down in Walla Walla. And of course, the multimedia and internet, there's a variety of ways, plus the fact that I just get around to the district because I do have family business interests in Loudon and Tushy area and up the valley towards Prosser. So it takes a lot of work and getting around, making yourself available, as has been said, answering the phone. These are all mechanisms to maintain contact, and I plan on performing that to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Ms. Francic, you're up first again. The partisanship of national politics seems to have colored much of our day-to-day interactions. If elected, how would you try to build consensus in the legislature, or do you anticipate that you would agree with your party's position on most issues?
Well, as you remember, I grew up in a divided household, two Republicans, two Democrats. This went from my grandparents down to my parents. So I am very used to working with people who have different points of view. My 21 years on the Pasco City Council was all nonpartisan. We definitely had different philosophical bents, but when you address the issue, when you address what it is you're trying to achieve, when you address what's legal, and then you address what you can afford, pretty much that brings you down to the same cattle chute. So I have full confidence that I can work across the aisle. I am much more interested in meeting the needs of my constituents than I am in any party ideology. And I think that as long as we focus on the specific issue we're trying to solve, we can all do that.
Thank you, Ms. Francic. Mr. Milden.
Well, I was a Democrat when I came out of college. My folks are Democrats. And over the years, that having the same value system as my folks, which was hardworking, support their neighbors, participate in building modifications, just generally helping out community service, I kept those values. And today I'm a Republican. And I always wondered why my folks didn't come across, because they were hardworking. And I maintain that the principles that the Republican Party have are consistent with our U.S. Constitution and our Judeo-Christian values. And I would gladly invite anybody on the other side of an aisle to come across and participate with us in those common values of support for constitutional values.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Mr. Rood.
Thank you. If you go to my website, which is skylarrood.com, you'll see that this is the #1 issue that I have listed in my platform, because I think it's that important. Like I mentioned in my opening, over the last several years, we've seen the political culture degrade, I would say. So I think bringing that civility to the legislature, which, by the way, as somebody who's worked at the legislature, it's much better than we see at the the federal level. We see more bipartisanship at the state level, which is encouraging. But I think Democrats and Republicans have the best intentions at heart, nearly always. We have different approaches. If we didn't, we'd probably be the same party. But it's okay to have differences and to discuss them in a civil manner. And if we're not looking for areas of compromise, I guarantee we will never find them. So even if there's small areas where we can find common ground, we need to proactively look for those. Name calling is never, ever acceptable or productive. So that's what I would say about that. As far as being in Olympia, I have built relationships over the last 3+ years with Democrats, whether they're staff or legislators, and I welcome the opportunity to work with Democrats on areas where we do have common ground.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Mr. Milden, you're up first for the last question. Looking ahead, what do you see as issues of importance especially for Eastern Washington, that will require state support to help address them?
Well, thank you for that question. Number one issue for me is education. And we need to look at our education department, our education, our CWs and WACs, and how, again, back to the point of parental support, that we find ways, as we did in the Kennewick School District, we started a program called Ready for Kindergarten. And that was intended to engage parents, primarily at at-risk schools, to know that their contribution to their children was highly valuable. So that involved them reading at home, being there for their children, attending parent-teacher conferences, so that instead of being behind and being behind for years when they first enter school, that they could become better prepared and ready to take full advantage of their education opportunities. Their other item is water. Water, obviously, is a very significant item to us, and the continuing lowering of aquifers in the eastern part of the state is a critical item, and making use of more water sources and economies are very important. And the last thing is overregulation. I attended a conference yesterday, and they were talking about in a few years' time, they went from 50 pages of regulations to a stack this high for adult home care. And we need to reduce the regulations. 10 pages on a simple item of washing dishes. This is what was represented yesterday, and we need to find ways to decrease the burden, regulatory burden on those people.
Thank you, Mr. Milden. Mr. Rood.
Yeah, great question. I think the word support can be interpreted different ways. There's financial support, but there's also policy support. We can assist our local jurisdictions, our cities and counties by providing the tools that they need to be successful. One of those, I would say, is the Public Works Trust Fund, which you may have heard talked about in the past. I think it's very important. We don't see the legislature prioritizing that appropriately, in my view. It's a low-interest loan program, so a local jurisdiction, typically a rural community who might not have access to financing for their project, can apply for a low-interest loan. The state is kind of acting as a facilitator to make the financing of their project possible. So that would be one. I think as a general rule, any kind of an issue that crosses political boundaries or geographical boundaries, like water and air, are areas where the state is probably going to take the lead. Education, because it's number one in our Constitution, is going to continue to be something where the state leads on. But as I said before, it's extremely critical for your legislators to be seen as a partner with you as a voter and with our local governments.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Ms. Francic.
Thank you. Well, the three issues that I think are most important to take a good hard look at are education, healthcare, and infrastructure. I'll start with education because that is the paramount duty of the state. I know the McCleary decision has been declared settled, but there's a great deal of uncertainty as how it's going to shake out. Walla Walla has told me they are one of the districts that have become losers because they now actually have less money for students than they did before the recent shift in property taxes and levies. Other districts are happier because they've got more. So I think we have to very carefully take a look at how that ripples throughout the system and then make modifications as necessary. The second thing I will tell you is infrastructure. We cannot allow the state legislature to pass down any more unfunded mandates. The city of Pasco is a prime example. We need every single dollar we have to fund our roads. And when they came in and swept the liquor tax out of our fund, we lost a very significant chunk of revenue. So no more unfunded mandates, and I happened to serve on the Public Works Trust Fund for 10 years. The benefit of that program was it was self-funded, and then people, as they paid those loans back, the money went right back out into projects that were very, very low interest rates. So for almost every dollar you put in, you had like 98 cents going back into the ground. So the last thing I would say is healthcare. We have healthcare costs that are much more expensive than most other industrialized worlds. We're getting less outcomes for that money, and I know we can do better.
Thank you very much, Ms. Francic. Now it's time for closing statements. Once again, everyone has 1.5 minutes. Mr. Rood, you're up first.
Thank you. So I would say that I just wanted to close with talking about some of the relationships that I've built that I think would benefit this district, as I mentioned before. I think that a demonstration of that is some of the key endorsements that I've received in this race. State Treasurer Dwayne Davidson has endorsed, Secretary of State Kim Wyman, my former boss, Senator Maureen Walsh. The Farm Bureau endorsed a couple weeks ago. The state realtors endorsed. So I've worked to cultivate these relationships, and I see a significant benefit from our district using those at the legislature. Also, I'm asked this question, and some people are probably asking my age because I'm 32 years old. I think I have the energy to do a very good job in this position. I'm from the 16th district. I was born and raised in Walla Walla, and I have definitely made an effort to drive all over the district. I was looking at my mileage on my car, and I put 7,000 miles on my car since May 1st. We just crossed the 4,000 mark on our door-to-door activities. That provides a really great opportunity to meet with the constituents that I hope to represent and learn about the issues that are impacting them. And we could probably be here for 6 hours talking about the wide range of issues that are important to folks in our district. So I guess in closing, I would just say, again, because time is short, visit my website if you have a chance, skylarrood.com. I have some more in-depth issues there. And the phone number on there goes directly to me, so call anytime with any questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rood. Ms. Prancic.
Thank you. Your government is who you choose to elect. When we work together, we can build a better quality of life for ourselves and for our community. As I've been out talking to people on the doors, I hear time and again that people are worried, they're uncertain about how their government tax dollars are being spent. I remind them that when you pay taxes, you are making an investment. To realize the best return on that investment, you need the right representative fighting for you. Someone who understands the district and can work across the aisle. Someone who will create real results that benefit our district. I, Rebecca Francic, am that candidate. I grew up in Eastern Washington. I've raised my family here. I know our communities, I know our industries, and I share your values. I am not in this race for partisan politics or for special interests. I am running to represent you. As a Pasco City Council member, I invested in great roads, new industrial development, and jobs that raised Pasco's median income by over $20,000 annually. We cut crime by 80%, we expanded city services, and we ensured that Pasco was a great place to live. My experience in our community is diverse. I have a degree in agriculture. I'm a parent of 7 successful children. I have a 40-year marriage, 21 years as a city council member, and I work in schools as a nationally board-certified teacher. I can use this experience to craft reasonable and effective policies on your behalf in Olympia. I believe in working together, and I want to hear your concerns, ideas, and insights. Together, we can make smart decisions that will make our region a better place to live. Again, my name is Rebecca Francic. Please visit my website at rebeccafrancic.com and vote Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Francic. Excuse me. Mr. Milden.
Let me ask you all a question. We pay the highest, just about the highest road tax in the entire nation. I think California out taxes us. How many think we have the most wonderful road system in the United States? Do you think our roads mirror the amount of money that is taken from us to pay for this? How many people have gone over Snoqualmie Pass and Stevens Pass and White Pass and enjoyed the great roads to the wet side of the state? And why do we talk about more taxes and revenue? Why don't we talk about less taxes and revenue and return hard-earned money to hard-working, productive people? Governor talked about carbon tax increases. Now we have an initiative that looks to do that. And repeatedly, they want to income tax the entire state. And they mask it under different words. And why don't we reward productive people with less taxes, less regulation, and invest in individual freedom and determination rather than in government? Thank you. Vote for Dan Milden.
Thank you all very much for taking part today. We're going to take a quick break while we get the candidates up here for Franklin County Commissioner District 3. Okay. Well, now I'd like to take this time to introduce our candidates running for Franklin County Commissioner District 3. They are Zara Roach, Rick Miller, Rodney Burns, and Clint Didier. Again, for simplicity's sake, the candidates will be addressed in the order in which they filed. So let's begin with Ms. Roach, excuse me. Once again, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement. It will be 1.5 minutes for your question and answer responses and 1.5 minutes for your closing statements. So Ms. Roach.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to the League for putting this together. I really appreciate it. My name is Zara Roach, and I am running for Franklin County Commissioner. I have had the privilege for the past 7 years to serve on the Planning Commission. I currently serve as Vice Chair. In my 7 years of experience, I have learned quite a bit about municipal government, about land use and development, and I believe that there is a need right now in Franklin County for my experience. We are the fastest growing county in Washington State. As a former Pasco School District educator, I have taught for 5 years at Pasco High School and New Horizons High School collectively. I not only taught my students about reading and writing, I taught my students who are at risk of dropping out how to access resources in Franklin County. Things like crisis response, Ben Franklin Transit, as well as substance abuse counseling. The Franklin County is a young county. Our median age is between 28 and 34. And so as a mother of 3 young children, a first-time homeowner, and somebody who uses the services and the facilities of the county every single day, I want to be a representation for that voice that is not currently heard in our county. This is my home. I'm invested in it. I'm raising my kids here, I work here, and I serve my community here. And I would like to bring a few things. A spirit of collaboration when it comes to speaking to the residents. I've been out canvassing. I've been to Connell, been asking what their input is for me. I want to collaborate with the cities as well. We have 6 cities, not just Pasco. And finally, collaboration with Benton County. As well as collaboration, I'm just gonna finish my thought. I would like to bring transparency and a culture of integrity. So please vote for me, Zara Roach, as your next Franklin County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rick Miller. I am the current elected position for District 3 as a commissioner. I have lived and farmed in Franklin County ever since I was 9 years old. After graduating from high school, I started my own farm. As a farmer, I know how to work hard and to manage today today while budgeting and doing the hard work that we have been raised as. During the winters, I attended college, Columbia Basin College at first, in the winters while I farmed, and then I went on and continued to graduate with a WSU degree in agriculture. And during that time, I also went and got a teaching certificate, which I used as a to sub in some of the times. I wanted more to know about my kids and their school and what they were doing and how they were being taught. I also had minors in management and business administration. I also graduated from class 11 of the Ag Forestry Leadership Program, quite an intensive leadership program. At the age of 26, I was elected the youngest commissioner to Washington State Potato Commission. During my 3 terms, I served in legislative, research, and advertising committees. I also served on the National Potato Council for 14 years. I received national recognition for chairing the NPC's leadership institution, which is still in place today. Living and working in Franklin County for 50 years has allowed me to communicate with community members of all walks of life, and I appreciate many of the opportunities and problems facing Franklin County. I want to take advantage of my leadership ability and good common sense and working knowledge of how our government functions in the courthouse. We need experienced leaders. The one thing that we need to do is work with the city of Pasco and the smaller communities in the county. I am dedicated to this county where I was raised, and I am raising my children. My roots are here, and they will always be here. I was raised to, sometime in my life, to return what I have learned from, and I am doing that today. I would like to continue have your support, and would like to talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burns, your opening statement, please.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the Women Leagues of Voters for having us here. My name is Rodney Burns. I've been better known as Dobie all my life, and I grew up on a Franklin County farm with 7 brothers and sisters, and I've been married with almost 20 years, and I have 2 grown children, and I have my first grandchild on the way. As I was growing up, I was involved in various organizations like 4-H, FFA, the Grange, and I continue to be a strong supporter of these groups, as I think they're great learning tools for our youth. Pasco is a big agriculture community and it's growing rapidly and developing rapidly. With a lifetime of experience of farming and 15 years as a developer, a land developer, it has been giving me a deep understanding of the conflicts and opportunities in the future of the county. It is extremely important that we manage this inevitable growth very carefully, always aware of the balance and between the developers and maintaining farming and preserving the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Didier.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for all you do in all the elections over the years. I've attended a lot of your forums, and thank you for trying to get our message out there to the voters. You know, my mother is a very, very powerful person in my life, and I'd like to tell a little story about her and my dad. They were the first pioneers, one of the first pioneers out here to the blocks. Dad was a Korean War veteran, and so he got the chance to put in for the drawing, and they were drawn, and they put every dime they had into buying that piece of land. They didn't have no money left for a house. So Dad pitched a tent, and they lived in that tent for the first 10 months. That first winter, one night it got to be 19 below zero. Dad stayed up all night. He had 2 stoves in that tent, a wood stove and an oil stove. He had his coffee pot right next to that oil stove. At 5 in the morning, he grabbed that coffee pot to pour himself a cup of coffee. And nothing came out, and the coffee pot was full. When he removed the lid, he'd seen that coffee had slushed up. And if Dad would have known that God had blessed him with the first coffee slushie, we could have been filthy rich. But that wasn't my dad. He liked to work. He liked to sweat and earn. He did it the old-fashioned way. And he built a farm out there that we kids were raised on. This is where I learned the values and the principles that took me all the way to the NFL, playing on championship teams there, playing with the Green Bay Packers, coming back home with my wife when we started our farm, and then coaching Connell High School to its first state championship. I've been part of a lot of teams. And when you look down here at the Franklin County Courthouse, it's in disarray. It's broken. There is no team. Everybody's off on their own tangent. We have embezzlement, fraud, investigations. We have elected officials suing each other. There's no one working together. There is no sign of team. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring good sense back into local government. And I'm going to use hearing sessions with the public and department meetings, and we're going to get this government back together, working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Didier. And I do want to remind you voters out there, only people living in District 3 will have these candidates on your ballot. Just a reminder. So we will now move on to the question and answer period. Are you guys ready? They look excited. All right, we're going to start with an audience question, and I'm going to kind of meld it with one of our pre-done questions. So Franklin County recently filed suit and will join other suits against pharmaceutical companies over the opioid crisis in our country, the first governmental entity in our area to do so. So our audience member asks, what are your thoughts regarding opiate addiction, and how should the county respond? Ms. Roach, you are up first.
Will you repeat that one more time for me, please?
Sure. The audience question, what are your thoughts regarding opiate addiction, and how should the county respond?
My understanding is that Prosecutor Sant has taken part in this lawsuit, and rightfully so. We have an opioid crisis that is not unique to Franklin County. It's something that is happening across the nation, and it is putting extreme stress on our economy and on our local services, things like health care, things like substance abuse programs and crisis response, and our law enforcement. What was the second part of that question? Do I support it, and what?
How should the county respond?
I think the county is responding in the way that Prosecutor Sant going in collectively on this lawsuit. And once again, I would say that I support that. I can see the damage. I think that we all can when it comes to substance abuse. It's not something that just affects the person who's suffering from the abuse. It ripples out into the community, into the family members, to the employer who might suffer the loss of an employee, as well as people becoming homeless due to this issue. So I would be in support of this.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Mr. Miller.
Yes, as a county commissioner, we were brought to that by Prosecutor Sean Sant, and we agreed in the sense of it's a class action suit, and we are not actively involved. We are participating. There is a difference, and so it's not costing us any money or anything, but we're adding on to the interest of that class action suit that is a problem in our county. And it is a problem. It's one of the leading killers of young kids nowadays, as they are into some kind of pain pills, and they can't get any more, so they go to the next thing, and they go on to further things, which heroin addiction or something else. So it is real important that we continue this. And I think the county has made the right decision, and we will see what happens with that when the class action suit continues.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, this opioid problem is, the problem is that these guys have to hit rock bottom before they actually want to get help. And it's, and that's going to be where they're homeless and everything else. So it's really hard to get help to them. And so I think our county is actually doing a good job at trying to get the help to them. I mean, there's a lot of services out there that we're offering. Our sheriff department's doing a great job, I believe, on working on that sense. And that's about all I can add.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Didier.
Well, I'm going to be on the opposite side of this. I don't agree with this lawsuit. I think this is already being pushed by the federal government. As a 2-hip replacement person, I've had both hips replaced. I have used oxycodone and Oxycontin both. And I have taken myself off them. Today I use an aspirin in the morning, and that is it. The problem with our society today is there's no purpose of life for these young people. With our labor and industries taking away the right for us to teach these kids a work ethic, the value of earning $1 and spending $1 is lost. This has to be returned. I heard the earlier panelists talk of the same thing. Why can't we get our workers from here? Because we don't teach them a work ethic. You know, and it's almost comical to talk about this mental health issue and now putting a tax on our county for mental health when we got to take the candy coating away and realize we don't have a mental health explosion, we have a drug addiction explosion. And yet our county commissioners just voted to give needle replacement to drug users. So are we not compounding the problem here? This has to be addressed at the home with the family and the parents.
Thank you, Mr. Didier. We'll take another audience question. What are your thoughts on track? Would you negotiate with the city to take over track? Mr. Miller, you are up first this time.
Thank you. I remember bringing my 23-year-old daughter, when she was a baby, on a stroller when track was opened 23 years ago, and it was a fantastic thing. It's done its job with having a horse arena and everything. In the future, it's created a huge businesses down there, many homes, brought the water out to the community, out to the county there, and it's growing further. I believe, though, track should now go to a private industry, a private entity, somebody who wants to do something with it, because it is a burden on the commissioners. It's not really a lot of money to lose. It is and it isn't, because it goes back and forth. We do have an RV park there that pays for it, so it's just how you can consider it. But it is taxpayer money, and this is a business I really don't think we should be in. However, they did it because it was voted in back then, and they had a horse arena. That horse arena is now cemented over. My goal is to go out and see if we can get some kind of group and have a board of directors or something and do arena out in the county more, just for that purpose only, because that's the ones that really wanted that arena and are causing a problem with it right now, with why we cemented the track. But it can be successful. There's a lot of plans for it. I just don't think the county really should be in that program. I think that it should be private industry or entity that takes over that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Burns?
Yeah, the track, it was, I think when we put that track in, I kind of voted against that. And, that's not really a spot for the county to be in, but, seeing how it was there, and they shouldn't have cemented over the floor. I'm not sure all the legalities of that, but I know that there was plenty of people that were very upset with that. And then also with the chutes and stuff that came out of there, those were state-of-the-art chutes. They just hauled it off to scrap iron. I think the management of that track could be a lot better. And the chutes, I know the fair would have been interested in that, the bucking chutes out of there. And it's kind of a shame that they just hauled it off to scrap iron. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Didier?
Well, when track was first introduced, my mother and I were very active in trying to oppose it, because it was put on the taxpayers to build it. We wanted the private sector then, if it was so lucrative, they could come in and build it and make a profit and pay taxes to the county and create more of a tax base. But it got built, and we were told that the 4-Hers and the FFAers would have events there. They've never had an event there. Now they have cemented over the floor, and I'm with Rick. I think the quicker the county can get their hands off of this, the better for the public, because it has never been in the black. It has lost money every year and put a bigger burden on every resident of Franklin County. They've also had an incident out there when government is running this. Just seems like there aren't enough eyes to keep on everybody. The cash machines out there, we had an happening there where the cash was coming up missing. And Rick can attest to this. This is what happens when government runs businesses. They shouldn't be in competition with the private sector. Government was supposed to be limited and defined in how big it was. It was supposed to keep the rule of law. And we have lost track of what government's intended purposes are at all levels.
Thank you, Mr. Didier. Ms. Roach.
Thank you. My understanding of the track is that as a community center, it is one that does not generate in the profit. So what I'd first take a look at if I was on the board of the track is the personnel costs, the maintenance costs, the energy costs, see where I can trim excess. What I hear from residents is suggestions of what we could do with the track, and it aligns with what I believe my planning commission experience has been, which is when a municipality owns commercial land, it's able to turn a profit and make revenue from that if it holds on to it. If it sells it, it's a one and done. You don't get to continually, annually draw profit from it. Unfortunately, the track has not been able to break even. And so that would be the first goal to set, is to make it break even. The way that we do that is to encourage those events that do break even to reoccur, to encourage events that do turn a profit to reoccur. And then take a look at resident suggestion. One suggestion that I've heard is that we work with the PFD, the Public Facilities District, and turn track into an aquatic center. It is a viable option, one to be considered, but I don't think that we give up our commercial land as a county. That is not the way to be lucrative, and we're not an affluent county.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Mr. Burns, you're up first this time. In your opinion, how should the sheriff and his deputies work or not work with federal ICE officials in the apprehension of undocumented immigrants?
I believe they should be in full cooperation with the feds. You know, obviously we have a problem here in the United States. You know, that there are, you know, as long as they're here to work and they're documented to work, you know, that's fine. But when they're here illegally, that, you know, that's illegal. So I think it would be in everybody's best interest if, you know, our Sheriff's Department does work with the ISIS. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Didier.
Well, I think the paper article on that was a little misleading because I think Sheriff Raymond worked with ICE, not so much as the apprehension of the people, but he worked to make sure the situation was secure and safe. And he let ICE do their job because we are reading about the young lady of 40 years old down there on the river. All they're finding is her skeleton. She was killed, and they have apprehended the people, and they are illegal. We have to secure our borders, folks. I am fearful for my grandchildren when they go to town at night with my son and his wife. This is something that we shouldn't have to worry about, is the security of our own people in our own country. I'm all for workers. We need them. I'm a farmer. Now, granted, my wife and I and my two boys, we farm 1,100 acres. We don't have a hired man. It is a lot of work. And it's been really hard the last few days when the temperatures are over 100. Everything seems to break down. And the crops need water, but they also need laborers. We need people that can work. And I have proposed the avenue for a solution. And that is whoever employs the people retains 1/3 of their salary, and they reclaim it at the border when they go home. It's that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roach.
I think to reduce our Latino community to simply laborers is to degrade their worth and the quality that they provide to our community. ICE is a federal agency, and I understand that we do not have the ability to inhibit what they do and how they enforce federal law here. I'm on board with Sheriff's Department when they say that they will not use their county resources to detain people who are undocumented. Being undocumented and crossing the border illegally is a civil misdemeanor. It is the equivalent of getting caught fishing without a permit. It does not fit the crime to detain people and to separate families. I will not be complicit with that. I'm the daughter of Pakistani immigrants who came here not for just economic opportunity. That's another piece of the issue, is to acknowledge that people come here for different reasons other than jobs. My parents came for higher quality education because they knew the United States had good colleges. And they came here both with bachelor's degrees and then they attained those higher ed degrees. Back then in the 70s, there was a process. They went to their consulate, they applied, they were interviewed, they were approved, and they came here legally. So we should encourage our Congress members to do something to create a legal pathway for work visas, student visas, visit visas, citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Mr. Miller.
Yes, I support ICE, and I support the sheriff working with ICE when he needs to, and basically if there is some illegals, problems going on in our county, people will be put in jail. It doesn't matter who or what or where, that's just the way the law is. And so if it's an illegal immigration person, what they do is they will hold them until ICE comes. And if the sheriff cooperates with them, that I think is correct. When we talk about borders and everything else, which is a little off subject, I think that it's not just the Latinos, it's everybody, Germans, Canadians, anybody that comes across illegal. It's a law, and they should not come across illegal. And I think there's just been a problem with our political system here, and ICE is there for a reason, and that is to control that problem. So I think the sheriff or our county should continue to work with ICE.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. After that hot button issue, let's go with something softer. We've heard from residents in Franklin County who'd like to see more opportunities for recycling. Would you support efforts to try and make recycling more available within the county, and how might that be accomplished?
And I do believe I start?
Yes, Mr. Didier.
Okay. Well, our family already recycles. It's about will. Are you willing to keep your environment clean? And we do work at that. We separate our glass, plastic. My wife just hauled it in today. She's taken off for a family reunion, and she made sure it was all done. It's an individual responsibility. We have went up to Tucson to fish years back with our kids, and we did some fishing, and then we picked up 3 bags of garbage. I mean, big bags. And it's sad that we don't take care of our environment more. Along the Glade Road there, I'd like to ask Sheriff Raymond to please have your sheriffs keep an eye on the bottles, the beer bottles that are being thrown out into our fields, because if we have a field of potatoes and one potato is found with any glass on it or in it, they cull the whole field. You're talking about millions of dollars. This is how big it is for the farming industry to make sure that we don't have glass in our food. So I'm asking the sheriff here publicly to ask his deputies to please keep an eye on the trash being thrown from automobiles going up and down the roads out in North Franklin County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Didier. Ms. Roach.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is just bring this back to values. And I'm a mother. I teach my kids to recycle. And the reason that I do that is because I value Mother Nature, I value the earth, I value the place that we live in, and I want to pass that on to them. I want to pass on something that is healthy and not something that is toxic. With that said, within the city limits, we have tried to pass recycling pickup, and it has been voted down. So I would be for putting it again to the voters, let them have a say in it. One thing that I heard actually on the news today on NPR was that this is a $1 billion industry, recycling is. So we can think about it or maybe pitch it as a Franklin County Commissioner as an economic thing if people are not on board with it because they don't care about the environment or whatever their issue is. So that's a way to think about it. This can be a lucrative business if we allow it to be, besides just sustaining our environment.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Mr. Miller.
I don't think I disagree with anything anyone said up here about this. I think it's a good way of taking care of these problems that we have. Recycling is good. We just need some place to do it, as you said. I do know that I've read recently that with the trade issues that China has stopped taking some of our recyclable goods, and it like you said, it's a billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of money involved to it, and it's something we should probably do more locally.
Thank you. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everybody up here, and I'm just kind of wondering, why are we sending our recycle stuff to China? I mean, I cannot see that be viable profitable to have the expense of sending it all the way over there to have it recycled. But sorry, getting off the subject there a little bit. But yeah, and I believe that it needs to be an easy process for people to do that, to recycle. That would sure help things out a lot to encourage them to recycle. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, it's closing statements. We'll start with the order in which we filed once again. And Ms. Roach, you're up first. 1.5 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's what I was about to ask. How many minutes do I have? So as a mother of children who are growing up here, who I plan to raise my kids here, as a former Pasco School District educator, which is one of the largest non-ag industries employers here, as a planning commissioner, as somebody who serves your community, as someone who has held quasi-judicial hearings, I think that I have the experience when it comes to county and municipal government. I have shown a spirit of collaboration when it comes to working with residents and working with city staff and being that in between government, city government, and the people. And that's something that I really care deeply about. Just last Saturday, we knocked on 200 doors. And I've been canvassing since the last weekend in June. So the first weekend was not so successful. I think we got to like 40. But every weekend after has been about 100 or 100 plus. And so it has not been my mission to tell people why they should vote for me. I have tried to get their input. I want them to have access to their elected officials. I want them to feel represented. I want their voice to be heard. And the bottom line is that I believe that I can do that the best. So I ask you humbly to vote for me, Zara Roach, as your next Franklin County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
I'd just like to start out with saying that being in my position is kind of not the funnest spot, because what happens, everybody finds these problems and they look at you and say, why didn't you fix it right? We have done things right. We have done a lot of things right. We got a great law enforcement system in our county. We had embezzlement 10 years ago that keeps getting brought up. That we solved by a $1.5 million software project that is catching this work. There's always going to be things going on. We find it, we stop it. In transparency, we tell about it. It's out there. So, everything's not as negative as people think. But I just think that at the time I would like to support, I'd like your support. We've been working hard at this. I've been in here for 3 terms, but there's nothing wrong with that because I get great experience in leadership skills. I bring you 45 years of business experience as well as 10 years of accelerated growth and proven planning experience in Franklin County, making our citizens, business, and agriculture communities strong and safe. I'm also proud of keeping taxes low in Franklin County lean. We are fiscally stronger than ever. Finally, I have been actively serving in our complex community with leadership roles in education, the Board of Health, TRIDEC, criminal justice, and many more, and 29 different committees of different things we work on, each commissioner. I have grown with Franklin County, and our future depends on these things: vision, experience, leadership, and a proven track record. Rick Miller, the right vote for county commissioner. Please vote for me.
Thank you. Mr. Burns.
The reason why I'm here is because I feel like as a developer and a farmer, I have this experience and the ability to manage this growth and honest and integrity, to help find new ways to bring businesses into our county to help with our tax base. We need to step back and figure out why these businesses are going to Benton County instead of our county. I have talked to contractors. They say they dread coming to this side of the river because of our regulations. I wonder why this is. As your commissioner, I would find out why and try solutions for the problem we have. I'd look at why there is not a head planning department person. With all the growth that we have going in our county, it is ridiculous to have a part-time county planner. As a Franklin County Commissioner, I would offer my depth of experience to the job and work and would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Didier.
When I got that opportunity to play for the Redskins and traveled across to DC, one of the hardest things it was to do was to answer Joe Gibbs's question. He wanted me to stay there. He wanted me to become a resident of Washington, D.C. After I mounted the courage and I told him, I said, Coach, this isn't home and it never will be. My wife and I came home every year. We never stayed in D.C. year-round because this is home. This is where I was born, I was raised, married my wife, raised our children. This is where I'm gonna die and they're gonna plant me in the ground. This is home. And I'm running for commissioner because of transparency, accountability. Transparency? No, not everything is transparent. The land deal out there, 70 executive sessions. Why the secrecy? What was so top secret about that land sale? Why couldn't the public know? We have never got the internal review about what happened on the Houston embezzlement. They've never released it. Our jail, we're millions of dollars away from completion, being done right, and staffing. Like I said, we have lots of problems in Franklin County. How are we going to resolve it? By listening to the public, listening to the staff. As a team, you include everyone so they feel like they're part of the team. That's not being done right now. We need a team at Franklin County, and we need to be leading the way in the state for transparency and open government. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank all of these candidates for participating tonight. Hey, before you all go, I do want to remind you, this will be on YouTube, so share it with all of your friends and family. And we want to say a big thank you to John Funvar, the Communications Program Manager for the City of Richland and City of Pasco Television, as well as his assistant, Bob Kreider, for recording this event. And for many years, John and his counterpart, Mike Charbonneau, over in Richland, have helped us share these things. Don't forget to vote August 7th. Tell your friends and family and neighbors.